Okay, I need to gather my thoughts about this because I just did some clarification over the whole my trans ex-husband forcing the kids to call her dad. So my kids want to call her dad. They have called her dad their whole lives. They're still adamant about it to this day. So this process has been like, I don't know, a year or 2 years, something in there.
I got to rewind it really quickly because I got to make sure that I'm hearing what I thought I heard.
Okay, I need to gather my thoughts about this because I just did some clarification over the whole my trans ex-husband forcing the kids to call her dad. So my kids want to call her dad. They have called her dad their whole lives. They're still adamant about it to this day. So this process has been like, I don't know, a year or 2 years, something in there. What happened was the kids would be in public and they would call her dad, and people would obviously turn their heads and be like, what? So people were noticing, and their dad sat them down and told them, you're not allowed to call me dad anymore, and you have to pick a new name. So my kids picked Achka and Baba. And my daughter has reported to me that when she slips up, Aaron quite rudely goes, I'm not responding to that.
Hold on. All right. So give me a second because I'm going to play the whole video and I'm going to play it in its entirety. But here's the thing. Very few situations, very few situations where you ever hear me say, yo, I'm not sure that the parent is fit to play a role in a child's life. I am always on the side of a child needs two, or children needs two parents in order for them to make sure that everything is exactly what it's supposed to be. And I'm even a little bit tripped up right now because this is wild, man. This it's a crazy space and a crazy time that we live in. And when I was being raised and born in 82, raised in the 90s, and I just didn't see this coming. You know what I'm saying? I never thought that I would be 43 years old as of the recording of this video. And we will be having a conversation about co-parenting and women that are divorced that are co-parenting with a man biologically that switched over into being a woman and is trying to figure out what the kids are supposed to call them. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a weird time to be alive. And every time that I see a story like this, or y'all send me something like this inside of my email, I'm just baffled. I'm just confused because, you know, it's these liberal ways and I mean, this is one of the very few times where I would say that I don't believe that the person is fit to be a parent. However, we got a huge portion of the country, thankfully not the majority in my lifetime, who knows by the time that it's my time is up, but we got a huge portion of the country that actually support this nonsense. Not only do they support it, at one point they were advocates for the idea that a child would be able to transition. I recently looked at an interview with Gavin Newsom, who I think is going to try to run for president of the United States of America. He's already hinted at it. And he's been in South Carolina. And they was like, yo, you think 8? They asked him, they said, do you think 8 is too early of an age to make that type of decision? And he was like, oh, I mean, my daughter is 9. So, that is wild. It's like, y'all didn't know this? Like, these people are not logical enough to make a decision or to see things clearly enough that we are now villainized as conservatives to say, no, wait a minute. That's a little wild. That's a little weird. If I am a parent, I can't even put myself in that type of situation because I'm a man, right? But if I see a woman in real life, if a friend of mine that's a woman say, yo, you know what I'm saying, going through a divorce and, custody or whatever, so on and so forth. Okay, that's not out of the ordinary. It happens, whatever, so on and so forth. How you gonna play this out? But, he recently came out and said that he was really a woman, or he identifies as a woman and he trans. Whoa, I'm already like, shoot. And then they go on and say, but how do I deal with my 2 boys or my 2 girls going over there and asking him to be their father in a fatherly way, but then they can't call. It's like, what the fuck is going on? You know what I'm saying? I am confused to how we are supposed to handle it. You know, in courts, we always evaluate whether or not a parent is fit to be or play a role in a child's life by whether they abusive and all of that. And it take, but we don't even trip about this. We just like, yo, it just is what it is. Influence them the wrong way, confuse them, make them worse. I think you better off being a single parent than you are to co-parent in this situation. But you know, like I said, I could be off.
And Baba. And my daughter has reported to me that when she slips up, Aaron quite rudely goes, "I'm not responding to that." I'm just going to leave it at that. So related to this then is my feelings on the subject, which is Aaron goes behind my back and tries to convince people that the kids have two moms, when none of us have agreed to that change or like difference. And it's disingenuous because it's trying to set me up to look like I'm a divorced lesbian. And if people are allowed to feel upset when they get misgendered, I'm allowed to be upset that people are sexualitying me based on my ex running around town trying to pretend that she was never trans. It's a lie. It's a lie, and I'm not playing it, and I don't care who comes in my comments, and like, just I keep doing it. But here's what I have to say about you coming into my comments. Like, do it. I make money on that shit when I respond to it. So
Yeah, this is a weird situation, and man, I just feel bad for the kids. You know, I genuinely feel bad for the kids. There are situations where women put themselves or marry a person, but then the person just completely switches and does a 180 because, you know, usually we hold people accountable and say, oh, you picked them. They never really changed from what they were. But yes, there are some situations, some very rare few situations where we got to side with the person that wind up getting divorced because of the circumstance that they put in, because a person decides that they no longer even want to identify themselves as a certain way, and then they making you look bad, and then they ruining the kids on top of it. Like, this is a bad circumstance. This is a bad situation. And so we gotta start to have different conversations when we get these type of videos and these type of emails, because I'm not in favor of what we see happening right here. And I'm never going to support the idea of kids having to subject themselves to this type of circumstance. And I think that it is unfortunate that people are now facing this type of situation because, you know, it's bad. It's just horrible. I don't even know how to really, like, this hit me like a ton of bricks right here. What do you do? What do you do if the person that you used to be married to switches their genders, which I'm assuming that they still able to do depending on what state that you in? They switch their genders and then they force your children to identify them a certain type of way, and you don't agree with the lifestyle, but then you got to prevent your, like, do you just like skip it? You know, it just is what it is. You fight for your kids. Like, that's a situation where I would say that women or men should fight for their children because they should never be subjected to that type of situation. Always gonna link back to the content creator. Make sure y'all tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description. Teach Henley, 40% off your first order, 20% off for life. It's a wild situation. Let me know what y'all think inside of the comments, fam.